Okay, so again, this is a recap of the disintegration meeting on August 20th with Dimitri. Dimitri, take it away. Let's hear about last night.
Hey, yeah, last night was a really good group. It was really well attended. If there was a theme or one that struck me in the hour and a half that we were there, was just sort of how everyone's experience is individual, and there's no set reaction with psychedelics. So that got kicked off because there was a woman came and she had worked, or at least followed the recommendation of the researchers, and couldn't find a sitter, but found someone whose job wasn't to sit. But
when you say sitter, you mean somebody to sit with her during her experience?
Yeah, that's one of the protocols, is that they have someone. And she got, I think, the Johns Hopkins playlist, and she went in and she wanted to really address depression. So she followed the protocol for depression, not depression, but the protocols for these medicines you need to get off of SSRIs and other antidepressives. So she went through that process, which is a difficult process. And so, she found a nice place in nature out west, and she had a person to sit with her, and she put on her eye blinds and was really ready to get the experience that she had read about in Michael Pollan's book. And did 2 grams.
Which book was that?
Michael Pollan's book. I can't think of it. I guess it's changing the brain or changing the mind. It's like the big book on psychedelics.
Okay, I'll look it up and I'll put it in the notes.
It's the big popular book, which is getting a lot of people interested again. Anyway, she did 2 grams of mushroom and really didn't feel much, and then did a third, 1 more gram, and didn't really depart much from baseline. Actually said she felt kind of bored, and then subsequently she talked about a deep feeling of depression afterwards, because you come here looking for the magic bullet, and a release from years of depression, and she didn't get it. And then the sort of the subtle and not so subtle with some folks, that new narrative in the mind is that I've tried the thing that works for everybody, that is this radical treatment, and it didn't work for me. And I think that's really a damaging narrative. Then we sort of went around the table, went around the room, and it just, everyone's experience is different in terms of dosing, in terms of what they see, what they don't see. I had a guy text me, and he's actually a therapist, but he's also, a psychonaut. Guy's tripped a lot and used Ibogaine to break his addiction, but and he was shocked to hear that people go into deep spaces and see no visions. So he talks about every time he does a few grams or 3 grams of mushrooms, the walls start to breathe. This woman did 3 grams, laid completely still. And this is a guy who's done psychedelics for many, many years. And she hadn't done anything, I think, since college. I believe she was in her 50s, and she saw nothing. And then some guy who had never done any psychedelics, who did an experience recently, which I think 4 grams of mushrooms, he went into this space of nothing, this darkness, this dark space of sort of, I guess, a non-dualist space. And then somebody else, a non-dualist space, I guess you would call it.
Okay.
Meaning that there was no separation, but there was no anything, And then another guy who did a similar dose, 3.5 grams, and did it by himself. The guy who did the 4 grams did it with a guide, and the guy who did 3.5 grams did it by himself in the country. And he just had this joyous, laughing experience, which really lifted him, with no guides, and he feels a lifting from his depression. He's sort of an introvert kind of guy, and he was laughing and smiling, and so here's all these reactions, and then all these reactions, and another person had done 2 grams and MDMA in combination, and sat with a sitter and processed really quick. This was done last week, I guess, and then left because she was done. She really had gotten some separation between herself and being tied up in a family member's emotions and problems, and she saw the separation, and then she went to a park and just laid in the park, and then there was a torrential downpour, and she just laid there, and then she was actually expressing some kind of guilt about not following through with the protocol, right? But she had got what she wanted, and she went and just splashed in the rain like a newborn child. And so here were all these different experiences of basically, with the exception of the person who took MDMA, basically the same substance. So, I mean, so much came out of that. I mean, one thing, I'll go back, and then I want to talk about the idea of what things should be. But this woman, you know, I asked her about what happened afterwards, and she said she fell into this sort of depression. I mean, she was off the psych meds. She had gone for this holy grail, and she felt depressed. She felt let down. She felt that she had failed. Here's this book, Michael Pollan book, which she heard about on Fresh Air. Terry Gross and Michael Pollan, I mean, you know, sort of the ambassadors of liberal white Americans, you know, respectability, right? I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, like if Terry Gross is saying some shit, it's got to be fucking true, right? And she didn't experience what they were talking about. And so she went through this depression. Fortunately, she was able to not even recontextualize it. She was able to find other methods, and she's still looking at psychedelics, maybe a different type of medicine or drug, maybe ayahuasca, maybe more, maybe she just needs a lot more, but she started to meditate. I think she started a yoga practice again, and she does feel better, but not as a result of the psychedelics. But maybe what I was sort of suggesting is maybe it's because you're stepping into this world that is sort of away from sort of the mainstream and going into this very unique place, that you're opening up to different ways of healing. And by beginning that journey, you're finding things out about yourself and finding some kind of healing in the journey itself. You know, I mean, I think that the most important drug out there, the most important drug experience are the placebo experiences, both negative and positive. And I don't think the placebo is the end of the conversation, it's the beginning of the conversation. So maybe she's experienced a negative placebo and she's shifting it. The other thing that came up was, like, you know, one of our regular participants in the group said that, you know, the thing about these experiences, they have to be, and she's in the fashion world, so I really appreciated this, they have to be sort of made like a tailor-made suit. Mm. So whether you're in like a ceremonial space, coming from some traditional ceremony, from you know, either indigenous or not, some traditional ceremony, it's not very tailor-made. It's following a protocol, and because of the context that we're trying to imagine psychedelics, which is the existing paradigm, which in our world, which is the medical industrial complex, there's going to be certain ceremonies or rituals or protocols or regimens that need to be followed, and it's just not that kind of a party.
So do you think it's not possible to tailor make one of these experiences to the individual?
I think it's possible. I don't know if it's effective or kind or right. I'm absolutely, it's what's happening. It's what's going to happen.
Well, how would you tailor make something like this? Because,
I've done
again,
it.
the conversation, everybody's an individual. They all have their unique response or experience to the medicine. So
Well,
unless you can kind of
my approach,
like a pre-medicate to see how they respond with a small dose, and then up the dose until you find something that's working. I mean, is that an approach, or is there something else?
well, I mean, that's just addressing dosage, right? So with dosage, I think you've got to be, my approach is to create a container, to co-create a container with the individual. So for dosing, we, talk about previous drug experience. Let's say I don't like to go above a 3, whatever the unit of measurement it is. Well, the 3, right? Or X. I don't like to go above X, but if someone wants to go above that or below that because they're either afraid, uncomfortable, or have experienced it, and they feel they need more, or they feel they want to go with less, I'd listen to them. And then, we can gradually build up, or if someone has a lot of experience and they want to go with more, then I listen to them and I follow their lead. I follow them because they're the expert with their own body, with how they're feeling at the moment. Then in terms of how it's administered, in terms of set and setting, I will do ritual that I have learned from various different traditions, if it makes sense to the individual. If it doesn't, I don't have to do that. If the individual wants to bring in something from their own tradition, whether it's a meditative practice, whether it's a prayer practice, whether it's a movement practice, that's fine. We'll do that. I play singing bowls and gongs these days. I always tell folks, if you don't like something, simply say, I don't like that, stop. If you want to talk, we'll talk. My trip is like go into the sound and let it take you, but that's my trip. If you want to talk, I might suggest we stop at some point and go into the sound and see how that works, or I might be playing while you talk. If you need to move, we'll move. If you need to leave, I'll go rent a car and we'll drive to the country. To be that mobile with something, this is a special, and I'd say sacred moment. Sacred in the sense that of how special it is. This is the chance to be self-indulgent and to be treated with great honor, and to step out of any sort of regularity and rote. I have a procedure I go through, but I'm willing to step out of that and stop. And also to value, if someone's scared, we can hold their hands. If they want to tell jokes, we can laugh. I don't know. They do. You do. So, yeah, that's how.
Okay. So when you say that they are the expert and you're following their lead, but as a guide, are there certain personality traits that you have that you are capable of somewhat accurately predicting how they're going to respond to the medicine?
I mean, people who are nervous will be nervous, but they could get to a space where they're not. People, yeah, I mean, the personality can either be submerged by the drug, by the medicine, or being overwhelmed by it, or just brings it out, So, yeah, I mean, if someone's quiet, I expect a quiet, session.
Right.
If someone is sort of boisterous and moving around, I expect that. If they like to talk and they're verbal, yeah, I expect that. Yeah, I mean, unless they're just completely knocked out by the medicine.
Right. Okay. All right. So, so more about the session last night then with the can you be a little more specific or talk a little more about like the individual or, the unique reactions that they have to the medicine?
I'll give you, I worked with a woman and she came and she was talking about an experience that she had with me. And this is about how a sitter might be able, what's that?
Was this last night or was this from
Yeah. She did an MDMA and psilocybin treatment with me in Portugal some time back. And she had taken on a lot of her brother's pain. And she was the type of person, there's a lot of people out there that are very empathetic and take it on, especially maybe I'll be binary and say this happens a lot with women where they want to just relieve the pain of somebody else by bringing it into themselves. So the first part, she was just standing there, laying there with her chest open, side by side. I was playing the Shruti box, and then I checked into her, and she said that she's just taking her brother's pain and washing it through her body, and she's going to cleanse her brother. And I said, actually, this is one of those places where, as a guide, I can say, that's not your job. That's not your job. That's your brother's job. That's your brother's work. And let's work on your journey and I won't go into specifics on that, but it was that point where it shifted up. And she just sort of talked about, like, this was months later, where she had been able to sort of internalize that in a real beautiful way, where she handed it over. There was also discussions about sort of dimensional healing. So
what does that mean, dimensional healing?
Well, I don't know if dimensional is the right word. I guess directional. So this idea that we must go inside and everything comes from inside, that's sort of shadow work, and that's sort of a more Western tradition and European tradition, and maybe going inside by clearing the mind is a more Eastern tradition. So that's the inside. And there's also traditions about going up, which is about ascending to what we call spirit. But the idea that the spirit is up there, which is in a lot of traditions, particularly, a lot of traditions, a lot of indigenous traditions, but also in sort of a new age context, which I think has capitalist influences, thinking that everything is an ascension up. And then there's backwards. This is at least my understanding, backwards, which is about ancestral healing. Then I also think there's side to side, which is about healing with peers, and then forward healing into the future and into our children and nieces and nephews and our students and so forth, younger people in our lives and the people who look to us. A lot of the indigenous traditions or traditions outside of Western traditions, European traditions, go up and back. A lot of the Western traditions, sort of psychological traditions, want to go in, but in maybe just stopping here and not moving all the way down to here and into the belly. And maybe in the New Age tradition, they want to go forward. There's this whole thing around money and psychedelics. And, certain psychedelics draw money. Anyway, we just talked about trying to work on all directions, maybe not at once, but with an idea that all those may be important to the individual and that it's possible to heal in all the directions.
So when you're talking with somebody, whether it's during a ceremony or post-ceremony and just support afterwards, you encourage all of these things you just talked about, the sideways, in, things like that? Or is there
It depends on what they're working on. It depends on where they're at. If they've got shit with their father, or if they've been abused somehow in the past, then we need to look at that. If they, let's say, the same issues, and it's time for them to look inside of themselves and see how they've embodied that and manifested that in their day-to-day, then look at that. If they have issues with co-work, the idea that is, to follow where people are at.
So you're not favoring one over the other. So you're catering it to the individual and also the individual's.
And if it exactly, and if those directions even make sense to folks, if someone looks at me blankly and doesn't get that, then I'm not going to push that on them.
Right, of course.
I mean, I got I got my shit. It doesn't mean it's the right shit. It's just my shit.
Okay, so if there was one big takeaway from last night's session, what would you say it was?
I'd say that it's like a tailor-made suit. The psychedelic experience is unique to each individual. And to go into these sessions or ceremonies or individual or group excursions with the idea that you don't know the destination. I say that the intention is the fuel. The destination is kind of unknowable. And with that knowledge, to be gentle with yourself.
Okay. And then would you also say it's true that the aftercare is also like a tailor-made suit? Would you continue to?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, there's certain things that, I think groups are good for some people. So come to a group, I'm not crazy about cognitive therapy. I think it's limited, but for some people that changes their life. I mean, find what's good for you. Meditation, yoga, aftercare. Even that, I don't know what it means. I just know what care means. Aftercare seems to professionalize it, and I think, and commodify it. I don't know what to say about that.
Aftercare, I mean, I think, what I jump to is after the medicine. So whatever.
Yeah.
Medicine.
Yeah. I mean, I think a good rule of thumb for most people is try not to go back to work immediately. If you can be away from the kid, go back to work immediately if you can. If you can be away from the kids for a few days, try to do that if you can.
You got to process.
If you can be in, if you can.
Right, of course. Okay. All right. So it sounds like there was some good stuff talked about at the session last night.
It was a really good session. Really great session. Heart opening and warm. We're on West 23rd. I think it's 116 West 23rd Street, the 5th floor. Ask for the group. Next Tuesday, which is the what?
Next Tuesday.
Yeah, but we're not doing it. What day is that? That's the 27th. 27th will not be happening.
There is no on the 28th.
No, there's nothing happening next week, but we'll be picking it up again the following Tuesday, and all are welcome. Get your space by clicking on the website. Look, it's Bowie's "We Could Be Heroes."
It's what?
It's Bowie. "We Can Be Heroes." Can you hear that? Standing.
Oh, no, we're going to get a little extra entertainment. Okay.
Yeah, that's the music playing. "We Could Be Heroes." All right, man.
All right. Well, sounds like it was a great session last night. Thanks for sharing that with us all. And like you said, every Tuesday, except for next Tuesday, the 27th, there will not be a session. Yeah. But you can book all other sessions right here on the website. And book it. Come enjoy. All right, Dimitri, thank you very much. And I will talk to you
Okay,
next.
take care, man. Bye-bye.
Ciao.